the direction that the executive office has gone with respect to economic development and resources allocated? Are they the same as last year? Are they reduced? Are they enhanced? I mean, where are we with what we've allocated for the board to be giving direction, as you say, later in the year about the functions that we would like to see the county participate in or lead? Where are we with the budget allocation for that?
I would say from the standpoint of the continuation of the commitment that we've had, there's always been an economic development coordinator position dedicated, and so we continue to have a full-time equivalent dedicated, which is Steve Dunnicliffe's position. As far as additional support, we would be looking to redevelopment as well as its budget unit 10 promotions, whatever promotion is. I haven't memorized the budget unit. There are some funds in there that could be looked at for contracting or for staffing. And so we would be looking at that probably halfway through the year after the board is given direction regarding priorities around economic development.
Well, I guess it still begs a few more questions. I mean, I know that there were a number of overages in the grand jury's expenditures, and some of the promotions dollars went to cover that. So obviously,
Last year, yeah.
Right. There obviously were dollars not spent, so they went in that direction. But it's sounding like there is no longer an allocated position that is specifically economic development coordination. If you're referencing Mr. Dunnicliffe's position as administrative analyst too, you're basically saying that he's playing that role, which I understand that Supervisor Delbar commented as to his predecessor doing some of the similar functions.
Yeah.
But my recollection was the board direction was giving additional resources, wanting to grow that function. Never had specifics outlined, but we were going to look at how we would delineate with more information the specific tasks vis-a-vis redevelopment, CDBG, grant writing, interfacing with economic development partners in the community, and the various other associated things that would be going in a new direction. So it seems like there's actually been a reduction, or that enhancement has not occurred. In other words, the enhancement that I believe was the direction of the board was to put additional resources into that. Now, if we have reasons to not fill that currently, then okay, but it seems like, in a sense, we're backpedaling if we haven't allocated a similar amount going forward. In other words, it doesn't seem that the enhancement component was ever really addressed or acted upon. If Mr. Dunnicliffe is basically in that role doing that, how do we get to the enhancement level? In other words, how will we have the option to divide it out into various functions if there aren't resources to do so?
Okay, so going back to the first part of what you said and the way you laid that out of looking at the issues and looking at additional resources, I agree with the way you laid that out. I would characterize it as we have not moved forward with the enhancements as opposed to we have not retrenched or anything like that. But one of the reasons why we haven't moved forward with the enhancements at this point is that when we sought to fill the economic development coordinator position, we were faced with two challenges. One is an inability to find someone who could function at that level of position, and the other was a lack of clarity, a perceived lack of clarity, I will say, from the executive office standpoint of the board's desire for what constituted appropriate economic development activity. And, because there have been a lot of general discussion, but it hasn't crystallized into specific actions in most cases. So what we're doing this year, so one is on the position, we said, okay, fine, let's find someone who has really good basic skills and see, if we can make sure that the things that have to get done in terms of CDBG, et cetera, are done, and then also address the economic development issues that we can, with the CEO also playing a prominent role in economic development activities. Then let's engage the board throughout the year on a series of discussions, speakers, et cetera, so that we can refine what we're talking about with economic development. And that discussion, refinement, will get completed by the end of this year. I think we're looking at October, although I'd have to go back and look. So the goal was by the end of this year to get clarity from the board as to priorities, to have the basics taken care of in the CDBG, redevelopment, economic development, housing field, and then be able to say, okay, now where are we going to head with enhancing this? And there are a number of directions we can go. We can continue to work with Steve Dunnicliff and make that happen, and then keep adding in administrative support to take out the monitoring and the reports and all those other sorts of things, and then kind of, grow where we're headed in economic development. Or we could add a position specifically for that and actually divide up some of the duties. But a lot will depend on what you as a board see as the priorities. If it's more of a focus on infrastructure development, and I would say kind of coordination and facilitation of working with businesses, as opposed to the more traditional economic development that people think of in terms of recruitment and of businesses and doing deals and that kind of thing. And I'm just doing gross generalizations here, but depending on where you want to see that emphasis, there might dictate how we end up staffing it, and whether we go with the model we've got now and continuing to enhance that, or whether we actually try and split off functions and have two different staff doing two different aspects of this.
So as that refinement process that you're mentioning is concludes towards the end of the year, this calendar year, what budget resources will be there in this fiscal year to take actions forward? In other words, are there any dollars allocated? So if the board refines, as you're suggesting, the specific functions or duties or goals or directions, will there be resources for any type of enhancement?
I would say there will be some resources, but it is certainly not a full-time equivalent position's worth. We would be looking to the discussion of the board with the redevelopment plan and other things. Certainly, I think we could look at a half year's worth of resources, and so we will be able to address that when we get to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Pinchas.
Well, first of all, I think we need to give Steve, what's he been here 3 months, give him a chance on we have a lot of things when we talk about economic development. The first issue we have is, of course, water. For instance, last week, the main issue of the Board of Supervisors, most things economic development-wise start with a land use decision. I wasn't there, but the board went back and forth on siting a wind tower. Now this week we're going to be talking about an apple shed over in Mendocino. Those are the type of economic issues we're focusing on in Mendocino County. I just bring to attention to your Director of Transportation's report. We all know of our problems in our building and planning department with getting projects moving forward. Hopefully we've made real progress with our environmental health, thanks to Carmel, with the issue of second units and hookup to wells and whatnot. I appreciate her involvement in that. That's going to make a big help. But I just bring your attention to this week's director's report on Department of Transportation. It says office staff is working on backlog of subdivision and use permit referrals. Now those are back subdivisions and use permits that have already went through the process and approved. They're just trying to get the work at a DOT. We have a backlog. I don't think we're really booming right now in this county, but we have a backlog there.